I saw my wife through medical school. She celebrated by divorcing me. I met Sarah when I was 23, working the night shift at a packaging warehouse on the outskirts of town. She was 21, a pre-med student at the community college, and she came in one evening with her study group to tour the facility for some kind of biology project about industrial safety standards. I remember thinking she looked tired, not in a dramatic way, but in the quiet, persistent way that people who work too hard for too long always look. We started talking during her group's break. She asked me about the ventilation systems, about the chemical labeling protocols, about things I'd never really thought much about, but knew from 5 years of doing the same job every night. I answered her questions, and she listened like my answers mattered. That was the first time in years anyone had looked at me like I knew something worth knowing. 3 weeks later, she came back. Not with her study group, just her. She said she wanted to check some details for her paper, but after 10 minutes of awkward small talk, she admitted she'd really just wanted to see me again. We went for coffee after my shift ended at 6 in the morning, sitting in a 24-hour diner where the fluorescent lights buzzed and the coffee tasted like burnt plastic. It was one of the best mornings of my life. Sarah came from a family that had expectations. Her mother was a nurse, her father a pharmacist, and Sarah was supposed to be a doctor. Not wanted to be, supposed to be. It wasn't that she didn't like medicine, she did genuinely. But there was a weight to it, a pressure that I could see in the way her shoulders tensed whenever she talked about her classes, her clinical rotations, her future. I came from a family that had nothing. My father left when I was 6, and my mother worked 3 jobs trying to keep us fed and housed. She died of a heart attack when I was 19, 2 weeks before I would have graduated high school if I hadn't dropped out the year before to help with bills. I'd been working ever since, construction, retail, warehouse work, whatever paid enough to cover rent and food and the slow, grinding debt my mother had left behind. Sarah and I didn't make sense on paper, but we made sense to each other. If you've ever felt invisible, like your story doesn't matter because it's not glamorous or dramatic enough, stick with me. This story is for you. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want more real stories about ordinary people surviving extraordinary injustice. We got married a year and a half after we met, in a courthouse ceremony with 2 witnesses we pulled from the hallway. Sarah's parents didn't come. They'd made it clear they thought she was making a mistake, throwing away her future on someone who had no prospects. Her mother actually said that to her, on the phone, where I could hear it. No prospects. Sarah cried that night, but she married me anyway. She said she loved me, and I believed her because I'd never had much reason to believe anyone before, and she'd given me 1,000 small reasons to trust that she meant it. The plan was simple. Sarah would finish her undergraduate degree, then go to medical school. I would work and support us. It wasn't romantic, but it was real. She couldn't take out enough loans to cover everything: tuition, books, rent, food, transportation, the endless hidden costs of trying to become something better than where you started. So I worked. I worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3. I did overnight warehouse shifts 4 nights a week, then went straight to a construction site for day labor on my days off. I delivered food on weekends. I slept in 4-hour chunks, sometimes less. Sarah studied, and I worked, and we lived in a 1-bedroom apartment with thin walls and a radiator that only worked when it wanted to, which was never during the coldest months. I want to be clear about something. I didn't resent it. Not at first. Maybe that sounds naive, but it's true. I believed in her. I believed in us. Sarah was brilliant, dedicated, and kind. She was going to be a doctor, and I was going to be the person who made that possible. That felt like enough. That felt like purpose. Medical school was harder. For years of tuition, books, fees, and exam costs. For years of Sarah studying 16 hours a day, sleeping 5 hours a night, coming home exhausted and hollow-eyed. For years of me working myself into the ground to keep us afloat. I stopped seeing friends, not that I had many to begin with. I stopped doing anything that cost money or time. I existed in the space between jobs, in the brief hours when Sarah was home and we could sit together in silence, too tired to talk but grateful not to be alone. There were good moments. There were nights when she'd fall asleep on the couch with her head in my lap, her hand curled around mine, and I'd think, this is worth it. This is what love looks like when you don't have the luxury of grand gestures. I remember one night, about halfway through her 2nd year of medical school, when she looked up from her textbooks and said, I don't know if I can do this. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sorting through bills, trying to figure out which ones I could pay and which ones I could delay another month. I looked up at her, and I saw the exhaustion in her face, the kind of exhaustion that goes deeper than just lack of sleep. You can do this, I said. You're the smartest person I've ever met. That's not enough, she said quietly. What if I'm not good enough? What if I fail? You won't fail, I said. And even if you do, even if the worst possible thing happens, we'll figure it out. Together. She cried then, not dramatically, just tears sliding down her face in the dim light of our tiny apartment. I got up and held her, and she whispered, I don't deserve you. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just held her tighter. The change didn't happen all at once. It was gradual, so gradual that I didn't notice it until it had already reshaped everything. Sarah started her 3rd year of medical school, her clinical rotations, and suddenly she was surrounded by a different world. Doctors, residents, attending physicians, people who came from money, who had families that supported them, who'd never had to choose between buying groceries and paying rent. She started talking about her classmates more, about their backgrounds, their families, their futures. She talked about a guy named Marcus, whose father was a cardiovascular surgeon, who'd grown up traveling to medical conferences in Europe. She talked about a woman named Priya, whose family owned a chain of urgent care clinics. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, she started talking about me less. I told myself it was just the stress. Medical school was consuming her. She was tired. She was overwhelmed. I was still working 2 jobs, still paying the bills, still making sure she had everything she needed to succeed. But something had shifted. She started staying late at the hospital. She'd text me that she was studying with classmates, that she had extra shifts, that she couldn't make it home for dinner. I'd eat alone, save her a plate, fall asleep on the couch waiting for her. When she did come home, she was distant. Not angry, not mean, just absent. Like part of her had detached and was living in a world I couldn't access. I tried to talk to her about it once. It was late, past midnight, and she'd just gotten home from a rotation. I was sitting at the kitchen table, wide awake because I'd just finished a shift and was too wired to sleep. "Sarah," I said. "Are we okay?" She looked at me, and for a moment, I saw something flicker in her eyes, guilt, maybe, or sadness. But then it was gone, replaced by the same tired distance. "We're fine," she said. "I'm just exhausted." "I know," I said. "But I feel like you're not really here anymore." "I'm right here," she said, but her voice was flat. "No," I said quietly. "You're not." She didn't argue. She just went to bed. That was the moment I should have known. But I didn't. I told myself I was being paranoid, insecure, selfish. She was under so much pressure. I needed to be supportive, not demanding. So I kept working. I kept paying the bills. I kept believing that once she finished medical school, once the pressure eased, we'd find our way back to each other. 4th year came. Sarah started applying for residencies. She was aiming for competitive programs in big cities, places with prestige, opportunities, connections. I asked her once if she'd consider staying local, somewhere we could afford, somewhere I could find stable work. She looked at me like I'd asked her to give up her dreams. "This is my career," she said. "This is everything I've worked for." "I know," I said. "I've worked for it too." She didn't respond to that. Sarah matched into a residency program at a prestigious hospital 3 states away. She was ecstatic. She called her parents, her classmates, her mentors. She posted about it on social media. She cried happy tears. I was happy for her. I was. But I was also terrified. What about us? I asked that night, after the celebration calls had ended, and we were alone in our apartment. "What do you mean?" she said. "I mean, are we moving? Together?" She hesitated. Just for a second, but I caught it. "Of course," she said. "We'll figure it out." But we didn't figure it out. Every conversation about logistics, about where we'd live, how I'd find work, what our life would look like, ended in vague reassurances and postponements. "Let's just get through graduation first," she'd say. "Then we'll plan." Graduation came. It was a bright, warm day in May. Sarah walked across the stage in her white coat, and I sat in the audience, surrounded by families who looked proud and polished and wealthy. I clapped until my hands hurt. After the ceremony, we took photos. Sarah's parents were there, her mother in a designer dress, her father in an expensive suit. They congratulated her, hugged her, talked about how proud they were. They barely looked at me. We all went to dinner at an upscale restaurant I couldn't have afforded if I'd saved for a year. Sarah's father paid, of course. He ordered wine, talked about his colleagues in the pharmaceutical industry, asked Sarah about her residency program. He asked me polite, empty questions about my work, the kind of questions people ask when they're not really interested in the answers. I felt invisible. I felt like I was watching Sarah's life from the outside, like I'd been edited out of the narrative. That night, back at the apartment, Sarah was glowing. She poured herself a glass of wine, cheap wine from the corner store, not the expensive stuff from dinner, and sat on the couch, her face flushed with happiness. "I did it," she said. "I'm a doctor." "You did it," I agreed. "I'm so proud of you." She smiled at me, and for a moment, I thought maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe we were okay. Maybe everything would be fine. Then she said, "We need to talk." My stomach dropped. You know that feeling when you realize something terrible is about to happen, and there's nothing you can do to stop it? If you've been there, drop a like. Let me know I'm not alone. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because this story is about to take a turn you won't expect. Sarah handed me an envelope. It was formal, official looking. I opened it with shaking hands. Divorce papers. I stared at them for a long time, trying to make sense of the words. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Irreconcilable differences. "Sarah," I said. My voice sounded distant, like it was coming from someone else. "What is this?" "I'm sorry," she said, but her voice was steady. "Practiced. I've been thinking about this for a long time. We've grown apart. We want different things." "Different things," I repeated. "I wanted you to succeed. I worked myself to exhaustion so you could succeed." "I know," she said. "And I'm grateful. But that's not enough to build a marriage on." "Not enough." My voice cracked. "Sarah, I gave you everything." "I know," she said again. "But I need to move on. I need to start my residency with a clean slate. No distractions." Distractions. That's what I was. 7 years of marriage, 10 years of love, countless sacrifices, reduced to a distraction. When did you decide this? I asked. She looked away. A few months ago. A few months. I felt something cold settle in my chest. So you've been planning this. While I was working to support you. While I was paying for our life. I didn't want to disrupt your studies, she said, and the irony of it, the sheer audacity, made me laugh. A harsh, bitter sound. You mean you didn't want to disrupt your studies, I said. You waited until you didn't need me anymore. That's not fair, she said. Fair. I stood up, the papers crumpled in my hand. You think any of this is fair? I dropped everything for you. I worked 3 jobs. I went without sleep, without food, without a life, so you could have yours. And now that you've got what you wanted, I'm disposable. Don't make this harder than it has to be, she said, and that was when I saw it. The coldness in her eyes. The calculation. She'd already left. She'd been gone for months, maybe years. This conversation was just a formality. You filed these today, I said, looking at the date on the papers. On your graduation day. She didn't deny it. Get out, I said quietly. This is my apartment too, she said. Get out. She left. Took her overnight bag, her phone, her keys. Went to stay with a friend, or maybe Marcus, or maybe Priya. I didn't know. I didn't care. I sat in the dark apartment, surrounded by 7 years of our life together, and felt something inside me break. Not dramatically. Not violently. Just a quiet, irreversible fracture. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Sarah's lawyer, paid for by her parents, was efficient and ruthless. I couldn't afford a lawyer, so I represented myself, which meant I had no real representation at all. The settlement was insulting. Sarah got to walk away clean, with her medical degree, her residency, her future intact. I got nothing. Legally, I was entitled to nothing. We'd had no shared assets. Everything had been in her name because my credit was too poor to co-sign for anything. The apartment lease, the car we'd bought in her 3rd year of medical school, even the furniture, all hers. I'd paid for all of it, but I couldn't prove it. I had no receipts, no contracts, no paper trail. Just 7 years of canceled paychecks and empty bank accounts. Her lawyer argued that I'd contributed nothing of value to the marriage. That my financial contributions were simply my share of household expenses, not support for Sarah's education. The judge, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and an implacable voice, agreed. Marriage is a partnership, she said. But there's no legal basis for compensating one partner for supporting the other's education unless there was a formal agreement. There was no formal agreement. There was just love and trust, and the naive belief that we were building something together. I walked out of that courthouse with a backpack of clothes, $200, and nowhere to go. I moved into a rooming house on the south side of town. $12 a night, shared bathroom down the hall, a mattress on the floor, and a hot plate that barely worked. The walls were thin enough that I could hear everything. Arguments, crying, the rhythmic creak of bed frames, the wet coughing of the man in the next room, who I was pretty sure was dying. I kept working. Warehouse shifts at night, construction when I could get it during the day. But something had broken in me, and I couldn't work the way I used to. I was exhausted in a way that sleep didn't fix. I was hollow. I started missing shifts. Not intentionally. I'd just sleep through my alarm, or I'd be too tired to get out of bed, or I'd stand at the bus stop and realize I couldn't remember why I was there. I got fired from the warehouse job. Then the construction site let me go because I'd missed too many days. I picked up whatever work I could find, day labor, moving jobs, cleaning offices at night. It was never enough. I lost weight. I stopped shaving, stopped caring about how I looked. I'd catch my reflection in store windows and not recognize myself. I thought about Sarah constantly, about what she was doing, where she was, whether she ever thought about me. I imagined her in her residency, surrounded by successful people, living the life she'd always wanted. The life I'd helped her build. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just tired. I thought about ending it. Not dramatically, but practically. What was the point? I had nothing. I was nothing. I was 30 years old, with no education, no prospects, no future. I was exactly what Sarah's mother had said I was, someone with nothing to offer. I didn't do it, though. Not because I was brave, but because I was too tired even for that. I don't know exactly when things started to change. There was no single moment of clarity, no dramatic realization. It was more like waking up slowly from a long, dark sleep. I was sitting in the common room of the rooming house one evening, staring at a TV I wasn't really watching, when the man from the next room sat down beside me. His name was Earl. He was in his 60s, with gray hair and a face carved by decades of hard living. "You look like hell," he said. "Thanks," I muttered. "I mean it," he said. "You look like someone who's given up." I didn't respond. "I know that look," Earl continued. "I wore it for about 15 years. After my wife left, after I lost my business, after I lost my house. I thought I was done. Thought there was nothing left. What changed?" I asked, not because I cared, but because it seemed like the polite thing to say. "I got tired of being tired," he said. "Realized that if I was going to survive, I had to stop waiting for someone to save me. Had to save myself." "That's a nice thought," I said. "But some of us don't have anything left to save." "Bullshit," Earl said bluntly. "You're alive. You can work. You can think. That's more than nothing." I I wanted to argue, but I was too tired. Over the next few weeks, Earl kept talking to me. He'd sit beside me in the common room, share his instant noodles, tell me stories about his life. He didn't offer advice or pity, just presence. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, I started to care again. Not about big things, but about small ones. I started showing up for work on time. I started eating more regularly. I started sleeping better, even on the thin mattress in that terrible room. I got a job washing dishes at a diner. It was minimum wage, brutal hours, and the work was mind-numbing. But it was steady. The owner, a woman named Rosa, was fair. She paid on time, didn't ask questions, treated me with basic human dignity. I saved money. Slowly. A few dollars a week, then a few more. I opened a bank account for the first time in months. I bought new clothes from a thrift store. I started walking to work instead of taking the bus, saving $1 each way. 6 months later, I moved out of the rooming house and into a studio apartment. It wasn't much, one room, a kitchenette, a bathroom that smelled like mildew. But it was mine. I slept on an air mattress and ate off paper plates, but I had a door that locked and walls that didn't let me hear my neighbors dying. Rosa promoted me to prep cook. It came with a small raise and earlier hours. I started taking on extra shifts, saving more money. I enrolled in a community college course. Just one class, Introduction to Business Administration. I didn't have a grand plan. I just wanted to prove to myself that I could still learn, still grow, still be more than what I'd become. I got an A. I took another class. Then another. I worked full-time and went to school part-time, and it was exhausting, but it was a different kind of exhaustion. This time, I was building something for myself. This time, no one could take it away. 3 years passed. In that time, I finished an associate's degree in business administration. I got promoted to shift manager at the diner, then assistant manager. Rosa taught me how to manage inventory, handle vendors, deal with difficult customers, balance books. She was patient and exacting, and she believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. I moved into a better apartment. 1 bedroom, a real kitchen, windows that let in actual sunlight. I bought furniture, secondhand but sturdy. I had a couch, a table, a bed with a real frame. I made friends. Not many, but a few. People from work, from school, from the neighborhood. People who knew me as I was now, not as I had been. I didn't date. Couldn't. The wound Sarah had left was still too raw, still too deep. I'd see couples holding hands, laughing together, and feel something twist in my chest. Not jealousy, exactly. More like grief for something I'd thought I had, but never really did. I thought about Sarah less, but she was always there in the background of my thoughts. I wondered where she was, what kind of doctor she'd become, whether she'd ever thought about what she'd done to me. I didn't hate her. Not anymore. Hate requires energy, and I'd spent too much energy just surviving to have any left for hate. But I didn't forgive her either. Forgiveness felt like something I'd give when I was ready, if I ever was, and I wasn't. I just carried it. The way you carry a scar. You don't think about it every day, but it's always there, a part of you. I kept working, kept studying, kept building. Rosa's health started failing in my 3rd year at the diner. She was in her late 60s, and decades of standing on her feet 12 hours a day had caught up with her. She had arthritis, high blood pressure, chronic pain that she tried to hide but couldn't. She started talking about selling the diner, about retiring, about what would happen to the place, to the staff, after she was gone. "I want you to buy it," she said to me one night after closing. I laughed. "Rosa, I can't afford to buy a diner." "You could," she said. "I'll sell it to you for what I owe on it. We'll work out a payment plan. You've earned this." I stared at her. "Why would you do that?" "Because you remind me of myself," she said. "And because I trust you to take care of this place." We worked out the details over the next few months. Rosa's accountant helped me navigate the paperwork, the loans, the endless bureaucracy of business ownership. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. On the day the sale finalized, Rosa handed me the keys and hugged me tight. "Make it something good," she said. "I will," I promised. I ran the diner for 6 months before everything changed. It was a Tuesday afternoon, the slow hours between lunch and dinner, when she walked in. "Sarah." I was in the kitchen, going over inventory sheets, when Maria, one of the servers, came back and said, "There's someone at table 6 asking for the owner." "Tell them I'll be out in a minute," I said absently. "She said her name is Sarah," Maria said. "She seemed, I don't know, urgent." I felt something cold spread through my chest. I set down the clipboard and walked out to the dining room. Sarah was sitting at a table by the window. She looked different, older, more polished. Her hair was shorter, styled. She wore expensive clothes, a designer purse on the seat beside her. She looked like success. She also looked exhausted. Not the exhaustion of hard work, but something deeper. Something broken. Our eyes met. "Hello," she said quietly. "Sarah," I said. My voice was steady. I was proud of that. "Can we talk?" she asked. "I'm working," I said. "Please," she said. "It's important." I wanted to say no. I wanted to walk away, go back to the kitchen, pretend she'd never walked into my diner. But curiosity, or maybe something else, kept me rooted. 5 minutes, I said. I sat down across from her. Up close, I could see the cracks in her polished exterior, the shadows under her eyes, the tension in her shoulders. The way her hands trembled slightly as she clasped them on the table. What do you want? I asked. I need your help, she said. I almost laughed. My help? I know I have no right to ask, she said quickly. I know what I did to you is unforgivable. But I'm desperate. What happened? I asked, and I hated that part of me still cared. She took a shaky breath. I finished my residency 2 years ago. I got a job at a private practice. Good salary, good benefits, everything I'd worked for. And then, I made a mistake. What kind of mistake? I missed a diagnosis, she said. A patient came in with symptoms that looked like a common virus. I sent them home with basic treatment. They died 3 days later from a pulmonary embolism. Something I should have caught. I felt a cold weight settle in my stomach. Sarah, the family sued, she said. The practice settled, but my malpractice insurance skyrocketed. And then word got around. Other doctors started avoiding me. Patients requested different providers. The practice let me go. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. Whatever she'd done to me, I wouldn't wish that on anyone. I've been trying to find another job for a year, she said. But no one will hire me. I'm blacklisted. I've burned through my savings paying rent, trying to keep up appearances. I've applied to dozens of practices, hospitals, clinics. No one will take me. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because I need money, she said. I need a loan. Just enough to cover rent for a few months while I figure things out. I'll pay you back, I swear. I stared at her. You're asking me for money. I know it's a lot to ask. It's not a lot to ask, I interrupted. It's insane. Sarah, you divorced me 3 years ago on the same day you graduated medical school. You took everything and left me with nothing. And now you're asking me to give you money? I know, she said, and tears started sliding down her face. I know I don't deserve it, but I have no one else. My parents cut me off after the lawsuit. They said I'd embarrass the family. My friends from medical school won't return my calls. I have no one. For a moment, I felt something crack inside me. Not sympathy, exactly, but recognition. I knew what it felt like to have nothing, to be abandoned, to be desperate. How much do you need? I asked. Hope flared in her eyes. 10,000. Just to get me through the next few months. I sat back. $10,000. It was more money than I'd had at one time before buying the diner. But it was also money I could spare. The business was doing well. I had savings for the first time in my life. Give me a few days, I said. I'll think about it. Thank you, she breathed. Thank you so much. I didn't say yes, I said. I said I'd think about it. She nodded, wiping at her tears. Can I give you my number? So you can call me. I'll find you if I decide to help, I said. She left, and I sat there at the table for a long time, staring at nothing. Thanks for sticking with me this far. This story is almost over, and I promise the ending is worth it. If this story has resonated with you, if you've ever felt used, discarded, or invisible, hit that like button and subscribe. Your support means everything. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my apartment, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation with Sarah over and over. Part of me wanted to help her. Not because I still loved her. I didn't, not anymore. But because I knew what desperation felt like. I knew what it was like to have no safety net, no one to turn to. Part of me wanted to refuse. She'd taken everything from me and walked away without looking back. Why should I help her now? I called Earl. He'd moved into a small apartment a few blocks from mine, and we'd stayed in touch. He was one of the few people I trusted to give me honest advice. What do you think I should do? I asked after explaining the situation. What do you think you should do? He countered. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to help her. Part of me wants to tell her to go to hell. Both of those are valid, Earl said. But here's what I've learned. Revenge doesn't heal you. Helping her won't heal you either. The only thing that heals you is deciding who you want to be. Who do I want to be? I asked. That's the question, isn't it? Earl said. I thought about it for 3 days. I thought about the person I'd been when I met Sarah. Hopeful, generous, willing to sacrifice everything for love. I thought about the person I'd become after the divorce. Broken, hollow, barely surviving. I thought about the person I was now. Stronger, steadier, someone who'd rebuilt himself from nothing. Who did I want to be? I made my decision. I called Sarah and asked her to meet me at the diner. She arrived the next morning, looking hopeful and terrified in equal measure. I led her to the same table by the window and sat down across from her. I've made my decision, I said. Thank you, she said, reaching for my hand. I pulled back. I'm not giving you the money, I said. Her face crumpled. Please, let me finish, I said firmly. I'm not giving you the money, but I am going to offer you something else. She looked at me, confused. I need a manager, I said. Someone who can handle the business side, inventory, bookkeeping, vendor relations. The pay is $30,000 a year. It's not much, but it comes with benefits and it's steady work. Sarah stared at me. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a chance, I said. You want to get back on your feet? You're going to have to work for it. Just like I did. I'm a doctor, she said, and I heard the old defensiveness in her voice. You were a doctor, I said. Right now, you're someone who needs a job. This is what I'm offering. Take it or leave it. She was quiet for a long time. I could see the war happening behind her eyes. Pride versus desperation. Ego versus survival. Why would you do this? She asked finally. After everything I did to you? Because someone gave me a chance when I had nothing, I said. And because the person I want to be is someone who helps people rebuild, not someone who kicks them when they're down. Even me? She asked, her voice small. Especially you, I said. Because you need to understand what you put me through. You need to see what it's like to start from nothing. To work for every dollar. To swallow your pride and accept help from someone you've wronged. Sarah looked at me for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. Okay, she said. I'll take the job. Sarah started the next week. I didn't make it easy for her. I gave her the same expectations I'd give any employee. Show up on time, do the work, no special treatment. She arrived in her expensive clothes the first day, and I handed her an apron and told her to start by cleaning the grills. I watched her face contort, shock, indignation, wounded pride. But she did it. She put on the apron, went into the kitchen, and started scrubbing. Over the next few weeks, I taught her everything Rosa had taught me. How to manage inventory without waste. How to negotiate with vendors. How to balance the books. How to treat staff with respect while maintaining standards. Sarah was smart, I'd always known that. She learned quickly. But she also struggled with things that had never been part of her world. She didn't know how to talk to the produce guy, a 60-year-old Dominican man who only spoke Spanish and had been delivering to the diner for 15 years. She didn't know how to handle Maria when Maria's childcare fell through, and she needed to bring her kid to work. She didn't know how to connect with Earl, who started coming in for breakfast every morning and who could spot insincerity from a mile away. She learned, though. Slowly.